Hello and welcome to healthyhouseplants.com, where we teach you all about gardening in the great indoors. If you'd like to support our show, please use our Amazon affiliate link below. Today we have a plant care video for Peperomia tetraphylla Hope. This is a low maintenance house plant with pretty small green round succulent leaves, as you can see. The plant has a trailing growth habit, and it's actually a tropical epiphyte. That means that in its native habitat, which is Central and South America, the plant grows on and up into other plants and can often be found growing on deteriorating wood as well in its native habitat. In the indoor garden, it makes a great hanging and trailing houseplant. It is slow growing, but will eventually reach 2.5 to 3 feet long in ideal conditions. The top of the plant will reach 5, 6, sometimes taller, 12, 13, 14, 15 inches tall. But mostly what you're growing it for too is the trailing effect of these beautiful long, which can become long trailing stems. Peperomia tetraphylla Hope is a hybrid of Peperomia depiana and Peperomia quadrifolia. It is often confused with another small rounded peperomia cultivar known as Peperomia rotundifolia. That one is also known as the trailing jade peperomia. However, these are two different and distinct cultivars, so Hope is different from the rotundifolia. Peperomia Hope can be recognized by its thick leaves that grow in clumps of 3 or 4 leaves spaced further apart along the stem than rotundifolia. You may also find on more mature Peperomia Hope plants that they form brown and green or yellow spindly spikes that resemble a thin wax candle, and they will poke out from the plant. So it's kind of interesting to know that those are flowers. So if you see some strange little spiky things growing out of your plant, you'll know what they are. As mentioned, they are flowers. And if you see them, that means that your Peperomia Hope is happy and healthy. You can let the flowers grow or you can prune them off, whichever you like. Okay, so how to keep this beautiful plant healthy and happy in your indoor garden? Well, the first consideration is lighting. Peperomia Hope thrives in bright indirect light. While it can tolerate low light conditions, it may experience stunted growth and fading leaves and leaf drop if it doesn't have enough light. Peperomia Hope also does well under full spectrum lighting, which should be used if the light levels in your home are low and during low light times of year, such as the winter months. Avoid putting this plant in direct sun, such as really close to a hot southern or western window without coverage, such as blinds or sheer curtains, as the fleshy leaves will burn. That will cause, what'll happen is it destroys the leaf tissue. It'll get kind of gushy and watery, and then it will turn brown and look really bad when it gets sunburned. So that's something to keep in mind to make sure not to sunburn this plant. Eastern exposure windows are ideal too, keep that in mind. Okay, so watering. Overwatering Peperomia Hope will quickly lead to root rot. Water the plant when the top 1 to 2 inches of soil have dried out. You'll be doing 1 inch for smaller plants, so such as this one is. This is more of an adolescent sort of a size plant, and 2 inches for more mature, bigger plants. So when that part is dry, when that part shows 3 on the moisture meter, the first inch to 2 inches. Soak the soil in the pot well. Ensure that the bottom of the pot doesn't sit in any excess moisture after you do so as well. You'll know that you have been underwatering the plant when the leaves curl and crinkle slightly. And as mentioned, if you if you water too much, you're going to get root rot. So, and you can also get some fungal spotting on the leaves as well with too much water. When you do water, always use warm water when you're watering this plant and actually all of your house plants. So warm to tepid water. Okay, fertilizing Peperomia hope. So you want to fertilize monthly, spring through fall, with an organic fertilizer. Chemical fertilizers are way too harsh for this plant and many houseplants, and I generally don't recommend using them. So chemical fertilizers have the higher NPK ratios of 15, 15, 15, 20, 20, 20, 30, 30, 30, 30, 40, 50, in those ranges. Organic fertilizer is going to be a lot lower NPK, 332, 555, etc., that sort of a thing. So, as mentioned, this plant really susceptible to chemical fertilizer burn on its roots. So that's why you don't want to do that. Chemical fertilizers, too much fertilizing, can also cause crispy leaf edges on Peperomia hope. So what you want to do is use organic fertilizers monthly, spring through fall, and even if you're a little concerned about over fertilizing, even use an organic fertilizer at half strength, and then you'll be safe, and you'll also be giving the plant some nutrients. Because remember how this plant grows naturally. It grows up into trees, it grows on other trees, it grows, as mentioned, on wood that is deteriorating. So this plant is absorbing very natural nutrients in its native habitat. That's why you wouldn't want to douse it with tons of chemical fertilizers, and you can even give it that half-strength organic fertilizing as mentioned. Another thing this plant really likes is every 3 to 4 months or so, top dressing, which is sprinkling on top of the soil worm compost. That it really does well with that, with a top dressing of worm compost. Remembering too that in its native habitat, it is going to be coming across worm compost all of the time, right? And that's how, one of the ways it feeds itself. So once again, as I always mention, you're Mother, Father Nature, and you want to simulate the conditions that your plants have in their native habitat in your home, and that's when you have really healthy and happy houseplants. Okay, so humidity. Hope Peperomia does come from tropical regions, so it does appreciate humidity, but it can also take lower humidity levels because of the nice succulent leaves that it does have, which are, generally speaking, the thicker and the more succulent type leaves you have on houseplants, the less affected they will be to lower humidity. So, for instance, maidenhair fern really likes a lot of high humidity, and those plants are very thin-leaved. Okay, so you want a range of 40 to 55% humidity. That's ideal. If you have lower than 40%, do use ways of humidifying the surrounding air, and I have plenty of videos on how to do that. And I will link below those videos as well as any other videos I mentioned in this video and any other related videos that would help you growing this plant. Now, as far as temperatures, Peperomia hope requires fairly warm temperatures given its origins. It will do well between 65 degrees Fahrenheit and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Much lower than that and it will suffer and may lose leaves, and really high temperatures, it can also suffer, but more problems in the lower temperatures. So if you get below 65, 60 degrees, 55, it's really not going to do well. Keep the plant away from drafty areas such as opening and closing windows and doors, and from heating and air conditioning vents. Those will dry out the air, and of course if you've got cold air blowing on it from an air conditioning vent, it's going to cool the plant off a bit too, so keep that in mind. Repotting. Because they are epiphytes in their native habitat, they're accustomed to growing with very little soil, so they do well when root bound. And I do have a video on what root bound is, so that means they do well and when they have a lot of roots in their pot. So avoid potting up this plant into too big of a pot, as that will quickly lead to root rot. You definitely want to go by my rule of thumb, 2/3 plant to 1/3 pot combination, or even 3/4 plant to 1/4 pot, because as mentioned, they're okay being root bound with lots of roots in their pot. When you repot, you can divide the roots and plant into 2 different pots, or plant into a slightly bigger pot. Use care when repotting as the stems are delicate and easily break. It's a good idea to plant in terracotta pots for these plants if you're going to be setting them on a table or up high on a bookcase to spill down. That will ensure that the roots are able to dry out some and don't remain too moist so that you avoid root rot. This also, as mentioned again, simulates the way the plants grow in nature. Or if you will be hanging the plant, try using a core hanging basket. Those do allow air to the roots as well, and these plants do really well in them as well. Pinching and pruning Peperomia hope. If you want to grow Peperomia hope into a compact and bushy mound, trim the vines on a regular basis to keep them from growing long. Although many people like the vines to grow long, so the longer the better, generally speaking, on these plants is really what you're looking for. So not much pinching and pruning necessary. Pests and diseases. Root rot and brown spotting on leaves, which are both caused by fungal infections generally brought on by overwatering, can be a problem with this plant if you overwater. So adjust watering, make sure you don't overwater. Mealybugs in scale can occasionally be an issue as well. Treat them with isopropyl alcohol at 91%, 70 to 91%, and make sure you are growing them correctly, as sickly plants tend to attract pests. Moving back a space back to the repotting, and which also goes in hand with this root rot issue. That is, when you do repot the plant, you want to grow in a light, well-draining mix. So that is a mix that, while water retentive, has some peat moss and core, it also has a lot of good draining agent like pumice or perlite. And I do have a video on how to make your own organic potting soil, which is a really good one for this plant. So there you go on how to keep your Peperomia hope healthy and happy and thriving in your indoor garden. Thank you for stopping by today. Please leave any comments about any indoor gardening tutorials you'd like to see. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And please check the bell if you'd like to be notified when new videos are released.